My name is John Tuzla, or the way that you would think about my first name is actually, it's also pronounced as Ken Tuzla. I'm used to call both John or Ken. So I'm a senior product manager for Oracle Multitenant. I've been with this team for almost 3 years now. And my main focus areas are the isolation concepts in multi-tenant. And today specifically, again, we are going to go over a subject which is my focus area, lockdown profiles, which is a feature that we introduced in 12.2. And here I have Patrick Wheeler with me. He's my manager. He's the senior director of product management for Oracle Multitenant. Patrick, would you like to briefly introduce yourself as well?
Thank you, John. Yes, Patrick Wheeler here. I'm responsible for product management of Oracle Multitenant overall. We've done several of these office hour sessions, and it's a big item for us is isolation in the cloud. So that's why I've asked John to focus on this one, because as he says, this is a big area of his specifically in our team. So Sudhakar, it looks like it's going to be a very intimate group, just the three of us. Abbas has dropped off. So don't be shy. We can make this very interactive for you. So John, I'll hand back over to you now.
Yes. Okay. All right. Thank you, Patrick. Let me just figure out my Zoom stuff. So, Sudhakar, I know you mentioned you are new to multi-tenant, and this is actually this was supposed to be a session about this feature lockdown profiles, which we introduced in 12.2. And as you may know, multi-tenant has been out since the Oracle Database 12.1. So you may not be up to speed with every single concept, so please don't hesitate to either type your question on the chat, or you may interrupt me as well. And although this presentation is going to mainly focus on this isolation concept, at the end we can answer your questions, and they don't have to be specific to this area. You can ask other questions around multi-tenant as well. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and start this topic. And again, this is a presentation that I delivered at Oracle Open World in the last Open World in 2017. It was actually, I also had co-presenters, a developer and some friend of us from Oracle support. So you can find this presentation online. It's publicly available. So the agenda is going to look like this. So we are going to first describe what lockdown profiles are, why do we need them, and which challenges they address. And then second part of the presentation will be focused on the capabilities of lockdown profiles, such as what you can do with them, what areas that you can secure using lockdown profiles, or what features or which statements that you can restrict within a PDB. And the third part is going to be more like a screenshot of certain real-world test cases to show you how you can basically configure these lockdown profiles and implement it in your PDB or CDB. And then we'll continue with Q&A after that. Again, like I said, the Q&A doesn't have to be around lockdown profiles strictly. So let's start with lockdown profiles. As you may already know, multi-tenant is already a highly optimized architecture, and we achieve this by sharing the key infrastructure and memory components. In other words, we basically eliminate the redundant replication of overheads. And our tenants, aka PDBs, not only share the host, but also the operating system, network, common objects. In other words, infrastructure is shared at various levels of the stack, like I said, including database, OS, network, and common objects. So let's take a look at all these specific areas that we basically share among tenants. So we have the network access, we have the system access that basically enable you to interact with the operating system from a PDB. And we have file access, which basically includes concepts such as PDBs, data files, directory objects, where you store all these files, and common user and object access. As you may already know, or if you're familiar with multi-tenant a little bit, we have a concept of common user in Oracle multi-tenant, which means that a user that can operate in more than one PDB, basically a user that we define into the CDB level and has access to multiple PDBs. And again, we also have common user and common object concept as well. On the other hand, local users obviously are restricted within the scope of a single PDB. And then the last area is the administrative features, such as running certain alter system statements and performing certain administrative operations that we will discover later on. All these areas basically show us potential areas that PDBs may interfere with each other if we don't take any precautions. So we'll discover this. We will cover these topics more in detail in the upcoming slides. But I want to first focus on what solutions we had in 12.1 and then what we basically introduced in 12.2 to cover all these 5 areas. As you see here, we have the network, administrative features, common user object, operating system access, and file access. In 12.1, we basically handled OS access using a concept called PDB OS credential. It is a parameter that was introduced with Oracle Multitenant 12.1, PDB underscore OS credential, which basically lets you designate a lower privileged operating system user to basically interact with OS. If you need to run a script, if you need to interact with the operating system for any reason, we basically encourage you to use a lower privileged user as opposed to Oracle. Oracle basically has a lot of privileges, and by using that user from a PDB, you can put other PDBs data or other objects in risk. So this is one area that was addressed in 12.1 and still available today, called PDB-OS credential. The other one is pet prefix and create file list. Again, these two clauses can be part of create pluggable database statement, and they have been available since 12.1. Pet prefix basically lets you define a directory specific to a PDB for its directory objects, and create file that basically lets you specify a directory for a PDB's data files. And as I said, you can use these clauses during the PDB creation, and you can embed it to your create pluggable database statement. And basically, you will be isolating all your file directories for each PDB. So far, so good. And the remaining areas, the network access, administrator features, and common user and schema access, all these are handled by PDB lockdown profiles, which we will discover in a little bit. So what's a lockdown profile? It basically provides you a configurable isolation, and it's a declarative way of restricting a PDB's access to network, administrative features, common users, and objects. It's a mechanism to restrict certain operations and certain resources within a PDB. Again, the scope of these restrictions is PDB-wide and not user-dependent. In other words, no matter what user you are using to connect to PDB, such as sysdba, sys, or system, they will all be subject to the restrictions enforced by these lockdown profiles as long as they are connected to that PDB. And on the right-hand side here, we have basically a small image showing different types of cloud deployments. As you see here, private database as a service, SaaS, and public DBaaS. As you may expect, the restrictions are going to be different, and you would expect more restrictions, increased restrictions, as you go to more like a public database as a service cloud. So an ideal way of doing this would be to basically define different lockdown profiles with different levels of configuration, different levels of restriction as you decide on which type of cloud deployment that you're going to be doing, either SaaS or a public DBaaS. So now let's take a look at the capabilities of these lockdown profiles by going over maybe a couple examples, and then to give more of a real-world example, for instance, to understand them better. So lockdown profiles, we can consider them as like complementary to grants. And as you may already know, grants are alone, all or nothing. And the reason I'm mentioning grants is that they are a very important area that basically you hand an important key to a user that may open several doors for them within your PDB. For example, when you grant an alter system privilege to one of your users in a PDB that you may only want him to perform certain PL/SQL related parameter changes using alter system, it may end up meaning much more than that. So that user might be able to do many more other stuff with his alter system privilege. So in our example, you basically grant alter system to your PDB user, and it comes with all these parameter accesses. So not only he will be able to change the PL/SQL related parameters, he can also do alter cursor sharing, he can change optimizer mode, he can change parallel degree limit. So the scope is pretty enormous. We don't want this. We want the granular control of these privileges. So lockdown profiles basically give you this. They add granular control of capabilities enabled by the grants. So in our example here, like I said, we only want our PDB user to be able to control these 3 PL/SQL related parameters. So what I'm doing here is that I am basically disabling alter system statement for set clause, and except for these 3 parameters, PL/SQL code type, PL/SQL debug, PL/SQL warning. Whatever you want to try with alter system, you will get an error message aside from except for these 3 parameters. And to give another example, actually it's maybe even a more suitable example, since we were talking about the cloud and other deployment types, I want to focus on our Exadata Express cloud service and what we are offering for that service currently today. As you can see, we have 3 different offerings. There are 3 different shapes, basically. The X20, X50, and X50 IAM. And the prices obviously increase as you get more resources, like resources in terms of PGA, SGA, and how much RAM you get, etc. So how do we basically restrict how much of these resources a PDB is going to get? How many CPUs a PDB can get? How many sessions a PDB can get? How can we restrict all these parameters? How can we restrict all these resources? And how can we make sure that a PDB user cannot go into his PDB and not change these values? So as you see here, there are various resource parameters here: CPU count, number of sessions, PGA aggregate limit, PGA aggregate target, SGA target, in-memory size, and parallel max service, etc. All these resource parameters are basically set by our CloudOps teams before an Exadata Express PDB is provisioned, and available to the end customer, and they are locked down by our lockdown profiles. So basically, we are setting a CPU count to 2 for S20 and locking it down. So when you go to your Exadata Express PDB and then try to do alter system set CPU count equals 5, you will get an error. And same is true for other parameters as well. So what else can you do with lockdown profiles other than just disabling alter system? So we can basically cover this topic under 3 different categories, which I would say those would be statements, features, and options. At the statement level, we have option to disable alter system, alter session, alter pluggable database, and alter database. Again, alter system has other sub-components as well that you can disable alter system altogether, or you can disable alter system for set class, or you can disable alter system for flush, share, pull, etc. The options are pretty much unlimited here. Whatever you can do alter system, you can disable each and every possibility. And feature-wise, you can disable network access altogether, or you can disable a single component of network access, such as you can just disable HTTP, or you can just disable SMTP, UTL SMTP. And again, if you are working on a really restricted database development or testing side, you may want to just restrict network access in your PDB, and you can just disable this whole network access features. Again, you can disable common schema access, OS access, Java runtime, and connections, again, using lockdown profiles. And the last but not least are the options that today we basically enable you to disable partitioning and advanced queuing database options. So you can disable these options, and for instance, when you disable partitioning option and try to create a partition table in your PDB, you will get an error saying that option is not enabled. And we are planning to basically expand on this area as well. We are planning to include more options that can be disabled by lockdown profiles for upcoming releases. So let's take a look at the syntax and how to configure a lockdown profile, and let's see some other examples. As you see here on the left-hand side, we have a CDB root, and the bottom there are like 3 PDBs: PDB OE, order entry, PDB sales, and PDB HR. So in 12.2, you can create a lockdown profile only in CDB $root. Basically, you have to be a common user with sysdba privilege to be able to create a lockdown profile in CDB $root. And these lockdown profiles can be assigned to any PDB that you would like. The way to do it is that you either go into the PDB and then set lockdown profile for that PDB, or you set a lockdown profile at the CDB root level, which applies to all the PDBs in your system. So let's take a moment and then cover this area better. By this area, I mean the scope of lockdown profiles. If you set a lockdown profile in the PDB level, so if you go to your PDB alter session, set container PDB OE, and when you say alter system set PDB lockdown equals this lockdown profile, that lockdown profile only affects that PDB. If you go to CDB $root and set this PDB underscore lockdown parameter, you will basically be setting this PDB lockdown parameter for every PDB in your container database. So it will affect every single PDB. But if you go to application container, application root, and then set this lockdown profile. So I don't know if you're already familiar with application containers, but it's again a new concept that we introduced in 12.2. Basically allows you to have a concept of application PDB. Basically, these PDBs are the PDBs that share a similar, say, pretty much the same schema, some application schema, but with different characteristics. Either that they have different data, but say share the same schema, or they have some common tables that they can access from a common place called application root. We would probably run out of time if I were to go into details, but in the Q&A we can probably explore more on the application containers. But if you set a lockdown profile in an application root, it will affect all your application PDBs. And so far we described how to create and set a lockdown profile. So basically you connect to CDB $root and you create your lockdown profile there by using the create lockdown profile statement. and you add restrictions or limits to your lockdown profile by using alter lockdown profile statement. And we will see it in our example in the next couple slides. So the third bullet point here is the most important one so far, that we haven't really discovered, the way that shows you how to basically add these restrictions to a lockdown profile. The one thing I want to mention is, before we move on to the example, is that you can add several rules to a single lockdown profile. In other words, you don't have to create different lockdown profiles for every single restriction that you want to define, and that wouldn't be helpful anyway, because there can be only one lockdown profile active for a given PDB at a time. So whatever PDB you want to work on, whatever PDB you want to apply restrictions on, you want to create a lockdown profile and add all the rules, all the restrictions that you want to add to that lockdown profile. So let's take a look at this example here. Basically shows us how to create a lockdown profile. Here we create a lockdown profile called profile1, and currently I'm connected to CDB root. As you can see, I can show PDBs and see PDB $seed, and I have two PDBs, CDB1 PDB1 and CDB1 PDB2. So far, I created the lockdown profile profile1, and I'm going to disable alter system. So the second statement here, let me just go back and exit the presentation mode since I want to highlight certain things here. This statement here disables alter system altogether. So you won't be able to run alter system at all. And then we go to the next one. And as you see, I am altering profile1, basically adding a new rule and saying that enable statement alter system clause flush shared pool. Basically, I just enabled alter system for flush shared pool. In other words, profile1 disables alter system for everything except for flushing the shared pool. And then we have the second profile here, profile2. And what this does is actually disabling alter system for everything other than set clause. So basically, I added another rule here saying that I want to enable alter system for set clause. So in other words, if I were to, when this profile is active, if I were to run alter system flush shared pool, it will fail because I only allow the set clause with this profile. Let's see how we set these profiles. And in this example, I am connecting to CDB1 underscore PDB1, so one of my PDBs, and I just do alter system set PDB underscore lockdown equals profile1. You don't have to specify scope equals both. It's a dynamic parameter. After I basically set this profile, I try to do alter system switch log file, and it fails. It says insufficient privileges. If we go back here and see, we only allow alter system for flush share pool. Right now I tried something other than flushing share pool and it failed. And then now I try alter system flush share pool and it succeeds. So it works. And again, it fails for alter system checkpoint. And I go to my second PDB here, CDB1 underscore PDB2. And in this one, I'm going to set profile2. Again, let's remember what profile2 does. Profile2 basically disables alter system except for set clause. So if I use alter system set, I'll be fine. If I use anything other than alter system set, it will fail. And in this example, what I'm trying to do is alter system switch log file, which is not a set, which doesn't include the set clause, and then it fails. And then I use alter system set DDL log timeout, and it allows me to perform that operation, set that parameter. So this is pretty much how you configure and set your lockdown profiles. And querying lockdown profiles and dropping them is pretty straightforward too. we have two views. In this one, basically in this example, we are showing CDB underscore lockdown profiles, but also you can query DBA underscore lockdown underscore profiles from your PDB as well. Then you will be able to see which lockdown profile there is, and it's basically if it's set in your PDB or not. And then to drop lockdown profile, you basically say drop lockdown profile and then profile name, and it's pretty much it.
Okay. I mean, if we are creating this as a sysdba, right? The lockdown profile.
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, the only way to revoke is again deleting this, or altering this via grants, right?
So in order to basically revoke a lockdown profile, what you need to do is you have to go to the PDB and set the PDB underscore lockdown profile to null, a parameter.
Okay.
So PDB underscore lockdown equals what do you call the parentheses and with the null string. So it will basically revoke the lockdown profile. Yeah.
Okay. And as a sysdba, we can also have this restriction enabled on certain sets of users.
So lockdown profiles do not let you specify which users you want to enforce these restrictions. Like I said at the beginning, if you set a certain lockdown profile at a PDB, it affects every single user, including the sys or system as well.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a PDB wide. It's a PDB wide restriction.
Okay. And one more question would be,
sure.
You are mentioning something about the application containers. Like,
yes.
How does it, for a user, I mean, like, what is the difference between the lockdown profiles at a application container view versus the normal view?
So what do you mean by application container view?
I mean, in terms of the application container, or about that, you said that there is a new concept in this 12.2.
Yes.
So how does it differentiate?
So basically, so let me just give you some background on the application containers first. So application containers is a new concept that we introduced in 12.2, basically to make the application management easier. So let's say you have a restaurant, right, with several branches that share the same restaurant application with the same schema, but they obviously have different data. They have different customers, they have different employees, all that stuff. So what you want to do is that you want to be able to manage your application in a much easier way. So when there is an application change, you want to be able to push it to an upgrade or a patch, application patch, to all your branches centrally from a central location. So for this, we introduced something called application root. From a logical perspective, it is something similar to CDB $root. We call this application root. But in a physical perspective, or in from a software standpoint, basically it is a special type of PDB plugged into the CDB $root. When you need an application PDB, when you, for instance, need the provision PDBs for your restaurant, each branch of your restaurant, you basically go to this application root, and that's where you submit these create pluggable databases, create pluggable database statements. Whenever you create a pluggable database while you are connected to an application root, that PDB becomes an application PDB. So it's a different hierarchy. So you can think of it like at the top of the chain, there's CDB $root. And then there is application root and regular PDBs, totally unrelated from application root. So PDBs that are hierarchically right under CDB $root. And there are application PDBs below application root. So 3-step hierarchy, if you can imagine. What I was saying regarding lockdown profiles is that similar to setting a lockdown profile in CDB $root and having all your PDBs affected by that lockdown profile, if you set a lockdown profile in the application root, all your application PDBs will be affected. So since they're hierarchically under a certain application root.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
So we have actually, yeah, I can show. I can point you to more resources actually. So Patrick, for instance, has prepared several like white papers and also the videos as well. I'm just going to go to our oracle.com, go to Multitenant. So this is our OTM page. I don't know if you're aware of it, but so this is Oracle.
Yes.
You go, yeah. So basically, when you click here, video series Oracle Multitenant, it will take you to YouTube, where Patrick basically prepared all these. So you can see there are like several videos by Patrick, and then I will also show you the Learn More tab that we have here, that we have white papers in these areas. What is NIVM 18c? I would recommend you start reading with Oracle Multitenant in 12.1 here. And then isolation is mainly around lockdown profiles. It's a white paper that I wrote. And then we have provisioning, and then this is a general white paper that covers these concepts in 12.2, including application containers. So each one of them has audiobook versions as well. So you may want to take a look at these and our videos as well, Patrick's videos as well. So that basically gives more ideas around like these application containers and other new concepts that we introduced. I can expand on it right now too. We still have time, so let me know if you have any other questions.
Sure, no problem. I'll just go through this and get back to you.
Sure. Okay.
Sure, Ken. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, no worries. Let me switch to presentation. I see someone else. Abbas is here too. I don't know if you kind of missed it, but hi Abbas, I will unmute you. Feel free to introduce yourself, or if you have any questions, feel free to ask around multi-tenant. Not sure if he's here. I mean, he looks like it, but. So how did you, so Sudhakar, this is a question for you. How did your journey start with multi-tenant? How did you end up working on multi-tenant? You said you just recently started getting familiar with multi-tenant.
Yeah, I mean, ever since the evolution of 12.1, I was just checking out these features. I mean, none of our customers till date have used this multi-tenancy.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So you are a DBA, right?
Yes, I am.
So you guys use, which versions of Oracle do you guys use?
We are using 12.1 currently. However, we are not using this multi-tenancy feature.
Okay, the non-CDB architecture you guys are using.
Non-CDB architecture.
And what type of applications are you guys running, and how many databases do you guys have so far?
We have around 200 databases, and
200?
Yes, and we primarily work on this DB part.
Okay. So any plans of moving to multi-tenant?
Not sure on that part.
Oh, not sure on that. Okay. Yeah. Because I mean, you may already be familiar with it, but one of the main advantages of multi-tenant is the ease of management, basically. Managing many as one, being able to perform several operations at the CDB level. That basically saves you quite a bit of time instead of going to each and individual PDB and then taking backups, for instance, individually. You can just do it at the PDB level, and you can do a CDB upgrade, and then all your PDBs can be upgraded as well. And these are just like the main benefits coming from 12.1. And when you move to 18C and then even 19C with our next release, the benefits are going to be even higher than what we currently do. So you are just exploring multi-tenant out of your own personal interest.
Correct.
I see. So what are you guys' plans for upgrading to 12.2 or 18C, or are you guys planning to stay on 12.1 for a while?
Uh, there are no plans of upgrade as such because all of them have been brought up to 12.1 recently in a non-CDB version.
Okay, so you guys just recently upgraded to 12.1.
Yes, yes,
I
yes.
see.
I mean, all the environments are now stabilized to this 12.1.
Okay, okay. And you guys were coming from 11 too?
Yes,
Okay.
11.203, 11.204.
Mm-hmm. Make sure you check out our OTM page. There are several resources, including certain labs. If you, for instance, go to the downloads tab here, we have the hands-on lab cookbook and scripts. Basically, if you are really enthusiastic about multi-tenant, you can download these scripts, and it has all sorts of instructions to tell you how to set up a VM and basically run our labs. It will show you that will tell you about the new provisioning enhancements, new application container concept, new lockdown profiles. I don't know if you heard about it, but we also introduced new hot cloning capabilities, relocation capabilities, which basically lets you clone a PDB with no downtime or relocate it with near zero downtime, kind of similar to our cold clone or unplug plug that's available in 12.1, but in a much cooler fashion. So feel free to check out these links as well.